One, and we are good. All right, guys, welcome to the Uncommon Sense podcast, Ep.5. Mind games. I am here with a good friend. We've trained together a couple of times. I've come to know her as the premium mental girl whenever you're dealing with sports and athletes and getting ready for the game. This is the woman you come see, Miss Cam Charbonneau. How are you today?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I'm very, very good. Okay, so I was watching football the other day, and as is every sport and everything that's going on in the world, greatly affected with COVID, greatly affected with stoppages and starts and just the overall interruption that I think everybody's dealing with nowadays. But the one question that kept coming to my mind was I was trying to figure out like what it must be like to be an athlete now in this situation. I mean, we were both college athletes. I played football. You were huge in pretty much every sport you ever played. You just excel in everything you do. But yeah, it just getting ready to go. It was hard enough when, your week simply consisted of going to practice, studying, making sure you were mentally prepped for the game, and then going out and performing every week. Now it's, this week, maybe I can go to the gym. This week I can't. This week I can meet with my team. This week I can't. I got to go to school online. I got to do like this. Like there's just so much hectic and such less normalcy when it comes to being an athlete. I just wanted to talk to you today about like, what is your feeling on like, because you're dealing with these athletes all the time. How is it going with like dealing with them mentally, trying to deal with this like current situation?
Yeah, so just to give an audience more of an idea of the type of people I work with, a lot of it is varsity athletes. And right now it's a huge challenge for pretty much every athlete because of the uncertainty. Some of them actually get to practice and then, it stops and they have to train alone at home. And then on top of that, now everything is online. So they're sitting more than they're used to. And if you're an athlete, you probably like to be more active, right? So now there's challenges of, perhaps like just moving sometimes. It's finding the time to actually get up and move and then finding the motivation to train alone at home. If they're lucky, they have the support from their strength and conditioning coach and they actually have a program to follow, which helps a bit. I know some teams are getting together on Zoom and doing the trainings together just as you would like a group class. So of course that's helpful, but long term, everyone's just like itching to get back on the field or on the court. So, and there's also the question of routine, right? So you're home more often, you're probably burning less calories, but you probably didn't change your nutrition habits. So I see it a lot where athletes are struggling to adjust their nutrition according to the exercise they're having now. Sleeping habits are a big challenge as well. I think a lot of athletes are going to bed later than they're used to.
Right. Yeah.
So then, of course, that changes your energy the next day. And then it's a huge, it's a vicious circle where if you don't sleep enough, well, then you're not as focused. Well, then you're not perhaps making the best decisions and choices. And you're just like not your 100% self. So It's even harder to train when you're alone at home. Stress.
Yeah.
Right. I think we're all stressed.
Yeah. Well, it's just, and everything I find, at least since COVID, everything gets compiled. Like the smallest thing that usually would never bother you because you're out training, because you're going whatever, now is like, it's like something that just keeps eating in the back of your brain. And you're just like, really isn't that big of a deal. Why am I so fixated on this stupid little thing? Like, it's just, we're all just so on edge because we just don't have those regular outlets we usually do.
And so now more than ever, it's important to learn how to take care of yourself, find that moment of stillness. Like you said, everything's compiling right now. It's like we're putting out fires everywhere. And I'm huge on meditation. And now's the time, actually, if athletes are at home, is to learn how to train their brain, learn how to get into the habits so that when you return to play, it's automatic, right? So I get my athletes to start a meditation practice if they don't have one already.
Right.
If they're off track, we'll get back on. Like you need to make sure you have breaks. Because sitting in front of the laptop all day, listening to professors, doing your homework, that's definitely not good. So, I mean, just a simple tip could be, put an alarm to remember to take a break, time your break, get up, get away from the screen, do something else. Maybe that's like 5 times a day for 5 minutes. Like that's fine.
Right.
Not everyone likes to meditate, but once they do start, they see how
it definitely, I've delved in a couple different forms of meditation or just reflection and just trying to. Me, it's always in the car. Whenever I'm in the car by myself, that's always the time where like I'll sit there and I'll talk to myself. I'll work out problems and situations in my head. I'll ask myself, what are you aiming towards? Where are we going next? Like that alone time in the car, I find either adds a lot of stress to your life or it de-stresses you a lot, depending on how you use it,
Right.
But yeah, meditation is definitely just one of those things that are just, it's a necessity. And I think it's been downplayed a lot over time, but I really think it's a definite something that if you do have anxiety or any kind of just mental instability, or even if you don't, it's a good practice to get into for sure.
Just that moment of stillness, and I'm overwhelmed too, right? I'm rushing around. We have clients, we're talking to different people, and it's just the time to empty our head,
right,
our mind space. And I usually take the time to teach people how to do that, and I'll meditate with them so that they're comfortable and they know they're doing it right, because everyone thinks you're doing it wrong for some reason.
Well, that's it. Just having a right or wrong. It's weird how our brain goes there. Like we want to be doing things correctly, and we get so fixated on doing things a certain way, either because it's somebody else's way, but we don't kind of allow ourselves to come to that natural level on our own. Like, what works for me doesn't necessarily work for you, but we're both doing it, so it's fine.
Just a practice. That's what I tell them. It's just an ongoing practice.
it's the effort, right? You need the effort for your mind to just be able to balance itself out, Yeah, it's crazy. So with the current state of like how everything is, like you said, you usually deal with like these college athletes and stuff. It's like you said, everything's been at home and everything's they don't have the access to like facilities like like they're usually doing. And I mean, like in a sport like what I'm used to, like football or like what we both played, rugby, that kind of thing, not having a field to go to, not having, weights to lift properly, not having your track to run at, not having, what I mean? All these things, even just the interaction of being able to, like I used to train with 10 or 12 guys at a time. Rugby, you literally have to be dependent on each other or the game doesn't work out. So what are the things that you're trying to get your athletes to understand, or at least try to practice in the meantime, until we can get back to some level of like interconnection, so that especially guys and girls or whoever is doing team sports, that they can kind of keep their mind in that ready position, before it goes to mush?
I think the biggest thing right now is getting them to understand that your goals need to be adjusted. Okay. So we have no idea when the next training or competition will be. So maybe your goals like 6 months ago or 9 months ago are not realistic right now. So what is in your control, and how can we adjust your goals, whether it's mental stuff, technical, how can we adjust it so that you're actually motivated now, right? For these, so basically just getting them to think of not just adjusting, but more short-term goals versus long-term, because we are getting information, like different information almost on a weekly basis or daily basis sometimes, right? So there's no way we can work towards a long-term goal if there's so much uncertainty. So basically I spend time to think, to get them to reflect on, okay, well, what's in your control? We're all stressing about things that are not under our control, like the government and the gyms being closed. And we have to accept it. And that's when the practice of meditation comes in, and learning how to let things go. Right. So now let's focus on, okay, you have some equipment at home. You have a ball. You can get to the park. When it's winter, that's another thing, and we'll readjust that. But right now, what is the goal for this month? What is in your control, and what can we focus on, and how are you going to track that? And it's going to be on paper. So we're on the same page. So you're accountable and you can actually see your progress. Because I think that's the biggest thing is like, most athletes they think that they can't progress right now. There's always something you can work on, but you definitely have to adjust the goal, right?
Right.
So even if it's mental, like I said, like teaching someone how to meditate, that's gonna, once you're back to play, that's gonna transfer immensely to how you manage your emotions and how you manage things in the moment and just developing your focus skills. So it's just making them kind of see the situation in a different light and getting them to reflect on different types of things they want to work on that they never thought of when things were normal.
Right. Yeah. Like a lot of things that are. So with that, I mean, so again, like I'm just thinking of examples in my head, but like, so when you're dealing with so many outward situations like this, there was one story I was reading of, so when the NFL started this year, they had an option for a lot of guys, like even Tardif, who's from Montreal, he opted out of the season because he said, I can't risk the opportunity. I have to take care of, my other business, him being a doctor. But a lot of other guys also opted out to say that, there's just not enough things in place right now to do this. And I'm just thinking about like from when I was playing, and I was like, I don't know if I would have opted out of that kind of scenario. I think like I was hard-headed and dumb enough to be like, no, football's football. Like I got to play. So with a situation like that, and let's say you have an athlete who is, gung-ho, does everything correctly, puts himself forward, but he comes to you and says like, I don't know how to manage this, like this part of this. Like, do I, you know what I mean? Do I really pay attention to like the welfare of myself, or do I keep, digging in my heels and putting forward? Because that in turn is going to have a huge effect. Like, if you're not 100% all in when you're training, you're getting ready, when your brain is partitioned, when you've got other shit on your mind, when you're trying to play sports, it shows, it reflects because you're not all there. So with dealing with a situation like that, how would you approach trying to help a kid make that kind of decision, for him or herself?
Well, you said it, right? You need to be 100% all in. And I think a lot of people kind of spend too much time trying to make the best decision, the perfect decision. So and this happened already, and I had to tell the person, well, why don't you weigh out the pros and cons? Take the time to do that, seek out support, seek out mentorship, but then you need to make a decision and stick to it. There's no wrong decision. No matter what, you'll learn from it, but you need to make a decision, right? So let go of, most athletes are perfectionists, that's fine. But you need to understand that you're probably looking for this perfect answer, perfect decision, but the more time you spend in your head, the less energy and focus you'll have in doing your tasks. So take the time and resources to weigh out the pros and cons. But once you choose, you need to choose. Give it time, and then if it wasn't the right decision, that's okay. Well, what did you learn from it? And then let's go to option B. That's fine. I think most people are just scared to make the wrong decision. So if opting out is what you decide and you want to do something else, cool, do that for a bit. Reflect on how you feel doing that. Right now is an opportunity for us to figure out what we want to do. Like, just to give a personal example, so I'm a personal trainer and also mental skills coach, and I kind of do 50-50. Right. In the long run, I want to be like 80-20. I love personal training, but I really want to focus on my mental skills training. The fitness industry is oversaturated, and I think there is a lot of work to do on the mental side. So with that said, because athletes aren't able to practice and play right now, I haven't had that many athletes to work with. So it's given me more time to work in the gym with clients privately. And now I'm like stacked with clients at the gym. And now I'm realizing that I really don't want to do that. This is just making me realize that, okay, it's okay for now. Obviously, I need to make some sort of income, but let me focus on the mental skills. So what does that mean? So I'm working with a business coach now. I'm going to revamp my website, but that takes time. So I need to make a choice at one point, right? I can't keep working. I can't keep seeing 10 clients a day and trying to work on my mental skill stuff.
Right.
I need to make a decision at some point. So I think all this is a really an opportunity for us to kind of look inward and reflect on, what's been working, what hasn't, and what do we want to do moving forward, and just stick with that. And it's okay if it doesn't work out how you thought it would. Just, again, learn from it. And I think just on top of that, it's like we go into these things with expectations, right?
Yeah, that's it.
We go into so many different situations with expectations. So how can we let go of expectations and just focus on one thing at a time? Being more in the moment instead of being so far in the future. Right.
Yeah. Like at least for me, the way I'm trying to look at it is with so much indecisiveness, like you can't really put your foot on anything right now because you don't know what's going to happen. After the first lockdown, I was reading I was seeing like article after article after article in my Google feed about how like gyms are dead, gyms will never come back, nobody's going to want to step foot in a gym. And I was like, okay, well, I guess we'll have to see. We'll have to figure it out, whatever comes. First week we came back, we had double our original attendance. We had a 30% growth, like, of people who signed up who wanted to do stuff. So it was like, oh, okay, well, I guess people are just like really gearing towards, they just want to be a part of something. They want to be in that community. They realize them being by themselves, like, I need to be around people now. Yeah. But yeah, just being in that space where you can, even now, how we're all locked down again, we're just trying to find ways to prepare for whatever comes next. Like I'm much like you. Like I do like the physical interaction of being with people and training people. I love to see people succeed. I like to see people find things hard and try to coach them through it so they don't see it as a roadblock. They see it as growth. Yeah. So even personally for me, like having to do the majority of what we do online now, when we first sat down as a group of trainers in the gym and talked about it, I was like, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to do this. I'm like, I hate doing this kind of stuff. Like, I really don't like it. But after talking, whatever, we realized that, listen, man, like for some people, them coming to the gym is their social space. Like this is their time when they get to be around people. They don't feel judged. They don't feel whatever. They lose themselves in the action. So we need to keep that. There's a community responsibility that we have in being in the fitness community where we're trying to lead people to a healthier lifestyle. And we've got to find ways to make it engaging. It's annoying and it's not what we want, but we've got to figure out a way to make it so that people still have that interconnectedness and they can still feel like they're getting something done that they can be proud of. So, I mean, even in that case, that's been one of the harder things I agree to deal with.
I think you brought up a good point. It comes back down to our why, right? Yeah. And if that's clear, then that should help motivate you through tough times. So clearly what you just explained was, you reflecting on your why, and maybe like you are going to continue training because you realize like during this time you can still be helpful to them, right? Yeah, whether it's online or not. But that goes for like everyone in this situation right now. I think if we could remember our why, it'll be easier to kind of push through these challenging times. Yeah,
for sure. So something else I did want to talk to you about, which was it's been pretty unique for the last, I'm going to say probably around like 3 or 4 years, is social stances for athletes, varsity athletes, everything. We're seeing like an unprecedented amount of, like social media playing a humongous part in a lot of people's lives, right? Like we're all very interconnected now. I was listening to or not a conversation. Sorry, I was listening to a interview with Michael Jordan, and he was talking about when he used to play as opposed to now. And he even said, he's like, there's no way in the world I could ever play in this age. He's like, with social media and all these things, he's like, I'd just be so on. He's like, I'd be so on guard for everything. He's like, he was giving praise to LeBron. He was saying, like, listen, like, I think LeBron's great because you look at the way that he not only handles himself on the court, but he handles himself off the court. It's insane. But these guys are professionals, right? Like guys like LeBron and Jordan and everything, they can hire people to make sure that they're doing things properly. Like when we're talking about high school kids, varsity athletes, you don't have those resources, but you're still looked at in the same light. I remember when Josh Allen, who is the quarterback for the Buffalo Bills, when it was his draft year and they were going, because I love watching the draft. I love watching that whole process, the Wonderlic, the psychology part of it, the mental, how they deal with them. They had gone back in his Twitter, like since when he was in like a junior in high school, and picked out some comments that he said that could have vaguely been seen as racist or whatever, just like really dumb teenager things that he said. And he's like, I apologize, I shouldn't have said that, and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, I can't, like, when we were playing sports in college, that was not a thing. Like Facebook, Twitter wasn't a thing. Facebook, I think, just had gotten like somewhat connected to where people could look you up on Facebook. I don't even think Instagram was a thing yet. Like I remember when I was in school, like that was the time when you first got your Gmail. I was like, oh, hey, look, there's Gmail now. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Google has it. Can you give me a Gmail? So I can only imagine the mental stress that has to be dealt with in this kind of situation. And how do you talk to an athlete about trying to remove that outside annoyance when it's so prevalent in society and like how people actually get connected to you?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. The bottom line is that it's a distraction, or it can be a huge distraction. I don't think I've seen much of this happen with the athletes that I currently work with. So it's hard to say, but I think that definitely, this can be a huge distraction. So the athlete needs to first reflect on how it's affecting their performance, if it is, right? And then set boundaries. A lot of us spend too much time on our phone. I know some athletes that, just let go of the social media before any competition or training, or sometimes even a week before big competitions, just to get rid of that noise. It comes down to reaching out to people that can help make decisions and resources. Like you said, the pro athletes perhaps have someone to help them manage that aspect.
Right.
But it's harder for an amateur athlete, especially like I think in Canada, just compared to the States, it's so different.
It's so different. It's unbelievable, the differentiation. I remember when I went over there, I had culture shock so bad. I still remember today, the thing that made me realize that I was in a different world was when you're playing football here. I mean, people who know football will know who you are. Like you'll get ranked in Quebec or you'll get ranked in Canada. They'll have an idea, but for general purposes, nobody really knows, right? You don't walk down the street and people are like, hey, I know you, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So when I went to college in the States, I was walking across campus and I was going to my class for the first time. And I heard somebody yell, hey, Blake, and started just naming off all these things about me and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, the fuck? How do they know who I am? I'm not even from this country. I'm not from this town. How did they even know who I was? And so I ignored it, kind of walked on, went to class. And then when I was walking back to class that day, I had people like walking up to me, like asking me questions, all these kind of things and stuff. And I'm like, I'm not really used to this. I'm not used to people feeling so like they could have access to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually physically gave me a lot of anxiety because I'm actually I'm an introverted person. Like who I like, and who I talk to. I'm very open. I'm very friendly with them. But if I don't know you, I'll be like, hey, hi. I'm always polite, but like I will be a little bit standoffish just because I don't like people in my bubble. So to have that and feel like because I'm playing sports, I'm losing that ability to gauge my interpersonal relationships, made me very nervous. And I won't lie, the first couple of weeks of training camp and stuff, it greatly affected me because you'd have people coming up to you and, asking you questions about like, oh, do you think you're going to overtake this person? What do you think this, how, whatever, all these like questions. And I'm like, dude, I'm just trying to get acclimated to playing in a different country under like a different set of rules with different people and everything, and not standing out like I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Like I can't answer any of your questions right now. You know what I mean?
So did it cause you to actually overthink and just question?
All the time. I overthought every single thing. Every time I stepped foot on the field, overthought it. I did not get into the groove of like how I usually do, probably till halfway through the season, because I was just so in my head so much. I was always like, don't fuck up this, don't do that, don't say this. Even to the way I spoke, because I'm from Canada, I'm not from the South. I had to like I was trying to pick up dialect so that I didn't seem like such an outsider, so that I could just kind of get acclimated into it, And it was just like, it was a whole other thing. It was a whole other deal.
You can rewind time and redo that first half. How would you change your mental to manage that better?
In all honesty, I probably would have established a regiment a lot earlier. Like before I left to go to the States, I had a very strict regimen of what I did. Like I'd go run in the morning, I come back in 8, I trained, I did everything. Like I had a whole thing, a whole plan of every day of knowing what I had to do, getting that done, and then all the little things that would happen that would throw it off. It was fine because I was still working towards a plan. But because I was so uprooted in what I was doing and not knowing the terrain, not understanding not really getting close to people. And then there's the whole cultural difference, like the latent racism, which is not, I don't really consider it racism, but it's just people treat you differently. There's different rules and different guidelines and everything to follow through. So it was just like, I only really kind of got it once I left. I realized that's what it was, but yeah, I definitely would have established a regiment that I could have stuck to and done. And that would have made me a lot more at ease because I would have got more familiar with doing something over and over again. And it would have gave me a certain level of like concreteness in my life. And
it's that sense of control too, right? And I think just having that regimen or routine is so important. And I remember discussing this at the beginning of COVID with people who now have to work from home. Like establish a routine so you don't just get up and go straight to your desk. Like,
right.
Again, it comes back to all this uncertainty, and the only thing you can do is focus on you and what you can control, and you have full control of your own routine and feeling good about it. And that just by going through your routine, it's like a checkbox already. You can feel accomplished first thing in the morning by doing a routine, or especially training at home. Like if you need to get into a routine to put out the mat the night before, and then, maybe do a meditation before, put on some music, whatever you need to do to just feel in control in your bubble and just go and do it without any distraction.
I mean, even for me now, the one thing that I do is with virtual PTs, I could train from home, but I actually get up and leave and go to the gym and use the gym space and do it there just to give myself a semblance of normalcy. And just because I know when I step in the door, my mentality changes. Like it's professional, it's work. There's no kid running around. There's no dogs running around. There's no spouse who's on the computer working. who I have to worry about. It's all about what's happening at work and making sure that is that professionalism kind of goes. And even my buddy who works with me at the gym there, he even said the same thing. Like, he still gets up at 6 o'clock in the morning and comes to the gym every day at 6:45, even though he does his work there, just because he's like, I need to stay in that routine, because otherwise I'm just going to find every reason not to. Yeah. So I think you're right. I think a routine and trying to establish some semblance of a routine is very important, even if you got to create a whole new routine.
It will change often. I mean, we're going to get into the holidays soon. Everyone's going to get off track with everything. Okay, so
it's going to be so weird.
We're down to the short-term goals again. If you don't have a routine now, establish one until the holidays, and things happen. It's okay, and you can even plan for that. Plan for another routine in the holidays if you need to. That will help you feel more confident going into it, and then after the holidays, adjust again. We'll constantly be adjusting, and so. I think I'm pretty good at it, and there are weeks where I got off track, but I'm able to come back. But there's a lot of people who aren't as flexible or adaptable as others, and now's the time to learn how to be more flexible and see it as a time to grow versus staying in that negative spiral.
I would say someone who can play rugby at a very high level and then go into Olympic lifting and compete, and then can run almost marathons. I think you have a pretty good mindset to say that I need to get shit done. Let's just get it done.
Challenge.
And be the best at it, right?
Feel burnt out. I just was going through the motions. I got bored, and it just got to me. I just 100%. Didn't know myself.
100%. No, and I think it's the one thing too. Especially with ex-athletes, I think the problem very much, I think we suffer from the same instances anyone who does an adrenaline sport, or even in some cases, I'd say not to the same extent, but former military, where you have this adrenaline rush that you're always seeking. And I know the hardest thing that last couple of years after I finished playing college, even after I finished playing rugby, those couple of years afterward, getting back in the gym was so hard. It was so hard. I did not want to see the inside of a gym. And even when I got myself up to get in the gym, it was what am I training for? I'm so tired of this. Because you did it, right? You did it, and you got to a level, and you made yourself so physically fit, and you became so you know what I mean? You reached that apex of yourself. You're like, what am I chasing this for? I'm not going to hit anybody. What is this? But then, like you said, change the avenue, change the aspect. It's okay, I need to be fit for the family. I need to be fit because I'm going to be training other people, and I can't not be fit and train other people. I need to find new things to, adorn. Even in this past summer, I picked up, bow hunting. Cool. I got my mindset. I'm okay, this is a whole other different thing. This is nowhere close to anything I've ever done before. Let's try to wrap our mind around this. And so before everything closed down, I was going to the range 2-3 times a week, because I had this mindset of that when I actually step out and go hunt, I need to make sure that I am hitting my target so precisely that it's going to drop the target just like that, because I do not want this thing to suffer. So I need to put in however many hours I need to put in to where I can get that cluster of shots so close to the target that there's no chance that this thing's going to suffer. So, I mean, just playing games like that was just, like you said, just finding something new to really delve yourself into was a huge help just to get through, the first part of this summer.
And so what is motivating you personally right now to train during these times?
Well, like we said before, right now it's, I mean, listen, I'm getting older. I'm 38, and dangerous times for guys is always from about 38. I think it's 38 to 43 is when guys' bodies really start to change. They start to, you risk getting very unhealthy very quickly around this age. So that's one thing. The next thing is family. I don't want to be one of these. My father played pro ball for a number of years, and he's in his, how old is he now? He's 75, I think now. And his knees are shot, his back is broken, his body's all kinds of crap. So I look at him every day and I'm I can't end up like that. I gotta be, and for the community too. I also, we train online, and like we said before, like you lead a community of people who are trying to achieve a level of fitness. You need to walk the walk. You can't just tell people, go do this, go do that, be here, do this, do that. It doesn't work that way. If it's one thing that I've always loved about CrossFit, specifically, is that you can't really be unfit and teach CrossFit. You can't kind of not show up to classes and not do things, because people just look at you like, but what are you talking about? Like, you're not doing this. Like, you can't do it. Like, so what are you talking? You know what I mean? So there's always that accountability. It's you want to be an example. And for me, I take that responsibility, very seriously, that if I want to help people, I need to be an example of that you can overtake, or you can overcome a lot. Like I've got blown meniscus in my right knee. I've got a torn MCL that I never got fixed in my right knee. I've got a partial tear in my meniscus on my left knee. I've got herniations from years of sports, from the bottom, basically from the whole bottom half of my spine is herniated to some extent. And when I was going to see doctors and stuff for MRIs, they're like, yeah, well, we don't know, but now I'm fine. But that's because I took training seriously and, rethought how am I going to train so that I could rebuild my body back to weight. And it's like, I'm not going back to being crippled. I'm not going, but I want that to be an example for other people who say
process.
Well, right? I had to start from ground. Like I got to a point, was it last winter? Last winter, I couldn't stand up straight. I literally couldn't I could not put pressure on my left leg. If I did, it was like a shooting pain that would go all the way into my toes, and my leg would start to go numb. Like it just was so bad. And I was getting physio, and I was trying to do all these things to fix it, and I was working through it. I was still teaching classes, and I was trying to get all this stuff done. But it just got to a point where like, I got to figure out something to make this better, because I can't go on like this. And then when I got the MRI, and luckily my trainer Nick, or like my physio Nick, who showed me and got me the appointment to get looked at, then we started building a plan on how to like rebuild my back and how can we change things. And I followed his plan perfectly, and I stuck to the plan. As much as I wanted to get back in the gym and just start lifting things heavily, like I changed all of it, like, and just rebuilt from the bottom up again so that I could get back to being normal.
Plan helps, right? And just that kind of connects with like athletes that are returning from injury. If you don't have a plan,
it's
you just don't know and you're scared. But as long as you reached out, you have the resources, you have a plan, you trust the plan, you do the plan, then usually it's fine.
Yeah, it's true. And I think that was also one of the hardest things that I had, because I was the kind of person who literally would just pick up stuff and be like, yeah, I can still bench 225. I can still clean 225. It's not a problem. I can still snatch this. And I physically could, but the pain that would come afterward the next day was excruciating. Like, and I'm like,
snatch that much, like not worth it.
Yeah, I was like, so I can't do that. I should not do this anymore. So for the first time, I had like an actual plan on like, okay, week 1, month 1, this is what we're doing. Once this is okay, then we graduate to this. Now we can start doing body weight stuff. Now we can start doing like, solid lifts. Like you can start squatting with a bar. You can start benching. You can start doing things. Now we're going to start to introduce to see if we can start to lift, if we can start to do cleans, snatches. Let's see how that works out. And it was just so, I think it was like, it took me 6 months or something like that I had to follow. And there were setbacks. There were times where something would re-aggravate, or I found a movement that I couldn't do properly or something. But then it's also not being so gung-ho on the plan, taking the plan as sacrilege, that the plan has to be adaptable. It has to be able to change with you, because if your plan is just so concrete, it depends on these factors exactly falling into place, it fails. It's going to fail.
You also need to develop that self-awareness and be able to listen to your body and know what your body is telling you, right?
That's it. Yeah.
And that's huge. That's one of the first things I teach people, like just to be more aware, more reflection, more writing. If I ask questions and the answers I don't know, that's a red flag for me, but it's totally normal.
Right. Yeah.
So just that constant reflection and developing that self-awareness is so important to be more adaptable and flexible. And
yeah. And I think as athletes, we don't really we don't accept boundaries for ourselves. We don't accept we're taught to, you think this is how far you can go, but you can actually push yourself a lot harder. Like, you don't need to listen to this part. This is telling you to stop, but you can go. Like, don't worry about it. So I think when we do start to get to that certain ages where injuries start to compound or they start to get serious, that's when it's the hardest for us to kind of like take a step back and feel like, okay, like, let's just reevaluate this, figure it out, and find a better way of how to do this where we're not going to keep getting injured all the time.
And unfortunately, it seems to always come down to that. You need to go through your own experience for you to have that switch in your mindset, right? It happened to me. My coach was always telling me, relax, you need more recovery, stop training 2 times a day, 3 times a day. Then all of a sudden you hit a wall, hurt my back because that day I was so tired, but I'm like, I could do it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I was not listening to my body at all, so not in tune with my body. And so I keep hurting my back once or twice a year, and then I'm out for weeks or months at a time. And at one point I'm like, this is not worth it. What am I doing wrong? Mm-hmm. I was not stretching enough, like most athletes, not putting enough time into recovery. But if I want to continue lifting how I'm lifting, like more than my body weight, I need to put the same amount of time into recovery. Yeah. Right. And I wouldn't, like, that shift only happened after, going through like 3 or 4 pretty bad injuries where I was off of training. So it's never worth it for me to push so hard that I can't train. That doesn't make sense. And again, I'm not being paid for this. I'm not a professional athlete, but this keeps me sane. It keeps me confident, keeps me strong. And the same thing like you, that gives me that I'm responsible for helping other humans and showing that I do this movement as well. And it's not worth it to be hurt. But I think we all have to go through these experiences to have that shift. And I can tell someone 1,000,000 times, tell them my story 1,000,000 times, but that's most of the time won't be enough.
Necessity is the mother of change. And it's the only mother of change.
Maybe we need to be more vocal about these types of stories for people to understand.
That's it. Because it's unfortunately, it's part of being a human. It's part of being a human being. Is literally the only time we really actually say, okay, yeah, things need to change, is when they have to change.
Yeah.
Because when it's an option, it's like, yeah, it's an option, but I'm still just going to keep. But once it's like, I can't do it anymore, then it's like, okay, so now let's figure out how to change these things. Yeah. Which is the hardest thing as a coach, is to try to get people to understand that, listen, you're doing things this way and I know it's working, but you're going to hit that roadblock. Like, you're going to, especially, I don't know what your experience is with it, but I know especially for me training guys, the hardest thing is when a dude can lift a lot, but he's not lifting correctly. Right. You're like, I get it. I understand it. I've been there. But dude, I'm telling you, you're going to hit an apex where you're going to put so much strain, something's going to give. Like, it's either you're just not going to be able to lift anymore, or your body's going to actually crap out on you and you're going to injure yourself. And it's like 9 times out of 10, the only reason those guys change the way they do things is because something ends up hurt. A lot of the time it's like it's a minuscule thing. Like, they'll get a back spasm, or their knee will, like, they'll start to get like tendonitis in the knee or something. They're like, I got to change. It's like, yes. I told you, you're squatting on your toes. You're not putting your heel on the floor. Can we try again now? Can we start over? But yeah.
Using video a lot more often, it kind of gets them to buy in a lot more, because now they're seeing it, right? Yeah,
exactly.
So I don't know about you, but it's been helping getting some messages across.
Yeah. For sure. It's when you want to show somebody that visual evidence, you're like, look, you see it? You see it, right? Now, if you see it, you really know something's wrong, because I saw it, but now you can see it, so you know you're doing it wrong. So, like, let's fix it. Like, put the ego aside. Like, let's make this thing as solid and concrete as we possibly can.
Imagine how much more you can lift if you fix this.
Right? Like, and especially, listen, especially Olympic lifting, like it's when you fix this like one thing, whether it's the speed of your pull or how you bear down before, like getting yourself stiff before you actually lift the bar off the ground. Like, there's so many little nuances that just like when you get it, you're like, okay, yeah, that was holding me back. Okay, now I get it. But yeah. Hey man, this has been great. I very much appreciate you taking your time to talk to me.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
I think a lot of people will listen and be like, yeah, I never really thought that way, or that's why this is this. And I think it's important that I think what you do for athletes is increasingly important, because I know probably going out around the time that we stopped playing sports, but that whole mentality of just bear down and just get it done and don't worry about it. I'm glad to see that that's kind of going away, and that people are treating athletes as people. We're allowed to have issues. We're allowed to have scenarios. And just because, you can run fast or, kick a ball or do something, it doesn't mean that you're some robot, for other people's amusement. You're an actual human being. So thank you for the work you do, because I know a lot of people are benefiting from a lot of the things that you're helping them with.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Appreciate it. All right, guys, that's it. Appreciate it so much. Thanks again, Cam. And this has been the Uncommon Sense Podcast, episode 5, Mind Games. Thanks, Cam.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
You too.